RID made a paper that was based on Janet Bailey. Janet Bailey was a former president of RID. She was one of the original developers of the NIC. She ran her own interpreting agency in DC. She printed an unpublished paper that others used and printed and talked about in the RID Journal of Interpretation. Hers was, she didn't print it per se. I would say it's hard to say. It's unpublished, but someone else referenced her work in an article in the Journal of Interpretation. It's probably the best way to explain it. But she specifically did a little informal study. And what she said is that most people ask for transliteration services, free or literal interpreting. They want to know the words. While they want conceptual accuracy, they want exact word glosses. So Judith Vieira is the author of that article that was printed in the Journal of Interpretation. She referenced Janet Bailey and her informal study, okay? So it's not a very scientific study, okay? So Judith Vieira, she wrote this. She summarized Bailey's findings, and Vieira herself considers herself a user of transliteration. She's exasperated by people constantly expecting her to use ASL or you want ASL when she wants English. She has actually had certified interpreters tell her, you just want everything. She said certified interpreters bitch about her. So she doesn't like the unnatural movements of interpreters. This is a transliterating consumer complaining about certified interpreters specifically. So we're talking about experienced people who know what they're doing. So Bailey's findings specifically, she ranked 11 different aspects of transliteration. And what people found and what they found important. So the biggest one was mouth movement. C signs are not the biggest thing. So everybody assumes when we're talking more English translation, we're talking C. We're not. We're not talking about C signs. It's actually very small. You know?
I think the little ASL signs are.
Yeah. So Bailey did this informal study of DC-based deaf people who use and expect English. Vieira expanded it, whereas Bailey had only done like 15. Vieira expanded it to 80 consumers. She also added like all this demographic data about these consumers. So for example, gender. It was about half and half, male, female. The age range was 27 to 78. The average about 49, so about 50. Okay. Status, 11 of them had a partner who was hearing, 16 of them, 9 of them were deaf, so on and so forth. So most of them had a sudden loss, 38% of them, like all of a sudden out of nowhere, boom, they lost their deafness. About 36% had progressive, meaning slowly over time they lost their hearing. Can you understand why some of these people want English maybe?
Yeah.
Based on just those two things. At birth, 16%. So not completely these two. There's still a small group of people who are prelingually deaf. That's a term Terry's probably used with you in the education of the deaf, who still want English, which is what I make about those bilingual deaf people still wanting English. And then 38% lost some or all of their hearing prelingually. So that's a good quarter, actually a good third. Okay. Education of this group, 22% had a PhD, doctorate level. 52% had a master's or bachelor's. 17% had an associate's or high school. So this is an educated group of people. Some of the job titles of some of these people. System engineer, trader, computer specialist, directors, 911 dispatcher. So these are some of the jobs of these people. Responses when asked, when you request services, how do you describe your needs? 29 said signed English or verbatim. Here are other responses. And this is what I've been telling you about. There's generic, I'm not giving you English, but what you want is English. I want someone with high-tech expertise. I don't care if they're certified. Again, that's certified. You know, we've talked about deaf people wanting someone with a good attitude. They'll take someone with less skill or less qualification if you have the right attitude. High-level skills. Preference is needed in terms of handle technical and regulatory jargon. This is someone who wants the words. And if you think about my interpreting experience with the government, these are groups that handled heavy red tape. Anything you do government, it's red tape. It's acronyms, it's laws, it's blah, blah, blah. Due to their job, they have to have this terminology. Verbatim, word for word, finger spelling, with good lip movement, no ASL allowed. Okay? So you see the words and the way they're describing it, okay? So when asked about agree or disagree on these different traits, mouthing, 100% said they wanted word for word mouthing of the English word of the lips. Okay? 100% of them said ASL interpreters can't transliterate. So they're pretty insulting of ASL interpreters. Okay?
Wow.
Yeah, they didn't have much respect for them. Well, you think about, there's all this, there's Gallaudet, there's this and there's, and everybody's pushing ASL, and they just want, they're freaking,
They just want their.
they just want the words and they want this, and everybody's ignoring what they want. So you can imagine why, how frustrated they are.
Absolutely.
So good translators, undistorted reproduction, non-judgmental. Someone who clearly signs and can keep up. We've talked about additions.
Omissions and stuff like that.
You have to make some changes. So you have to figure out how to make those changes, but keep as much in without deleting too much.
We just talked about today in Terry's class, conscious, what was it?
Strategic
Conscious-
omissions.
Yeah, stuff like, we talked
Yeah.
about that, and then she mentioned towards the end, paraphrasing and how.
Yeah, you have to you can't keep up English-wise. English signing cannot keep up with the pace. ASL can keep up with the pace, but English signing cannot. You have to make those adjustments to the message. You need to make sure you make the right adjustments. So, because they still want that stuff, okay? Someone who's not trying to show off their ASL skills. They go in and interpreters like, I can do ASL.
I think it's funny that it's highlighted.
Yeah. I have to do that because they're like sick of this ASL using interpreter. They don't care. They want what they want.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's quite important. Trying to keep me knowing someone who moves their mouth and is expressive. So, someone who gives me the same words used by the speaker. That's why I get y'all with, you're using the sign wash, you're not putting the speaker's words on your mouth during the midterm when I kept saying that to them. This is why. This is not me telling you, don't use the sign gloss. I should hear that hearing person's words on your mouth or see their words in your mouth. Verbatim, who has excellent language skills and vocabulary. I want the English, not a paraphrase of ASL.